Hello, making a video reflecting on Friedrich Nietzsche and his life and needing to calm down my mind. It is a wonderful material. It is the Blue God Tao. Friedrich Nietzsche was misunderstood for two reasons. He wrote in parables, metaphors, riddles even, and he wrote about certain observations in people, and he kept those quite vague and generalized often. He didn't go into the nitty-gritty. He didn't go into the details too much. There was more detail in his autobiography, so more detail in that, and a lot of things become more apparent also about his philosophy if you read the biography, the autobiography, because then the vagueness and the riddles and the metaphors become more apparent. It becomes more clear what he means by this when you read his autobiography, because there's so much stuff in there about him and the way he thinks and how he perceives society and the world and all the different people and the way they behave, the different types of people that will come up to him and that want to get to know him, and he doesn't like most people, so he preferred to go hiking by himself and be high up in the mountains above the smell of the marketplace and the smell of other people. And he was a lonely man. He wanted a girlfriend, he wanted contact, he wanted an intimate relationship, obviously, with a woman. He was a straight guy, he wanted a woman, but there was only one woman he has ever been intimate with, and that was Lou Andreas Salome, and I think it was only this one woman, I don't know for sure, but as a real relationship, as a real intimate relationship, he has been in bordels, but that was not a relationship, of course. But he was being a client, and he caught diseases, and he was always very passive. He always let the women do to him whatever they wanted to do. He wasn't active in the intimate relationships. So, a feminist, a very peaceful person, very lonely. Women shied away from him, from his beard, as he said, but it was not just, it was not the external things, it was his neediness and his loneliness, his despair. They couldn't really identify with him. They didn't understand him very well, what he meant, what he wanted, and so they were, as most people, they are adapted to society, and he was not adapted at all, and most people are afraid to be seen with someone who is not adapted to society, particularly with someone who is not accepted by society. So people don't want to be seen with someone like that, and so that left him completely alone and lonely. It's a tragic life that he has lived. So he expressed himself in writing, and he expressed all of these things, and there's a lot of anger In his writing, there's a lot of loneliness and frustration. There's a lot of self-questioning going on. So all of this has made people not understand him very well, and what he means, what his intentions are behind what he's writing, and where this is coming from. And a few did, but a few understood him and felt close to him, but very few in the world. And so that was already the main leading cause for people to not understand him very well and misunderstand him a lot. But then came his sister Elizabeth, who became a Nazi after Friedrich Nietzsche died, maybe even before. Yeah, I think she was already a Nazi before he died. She set up a camp in South America with her husband, who was murdered there. And then she came back to take care of her brother with her mother together. They took care of Friedrich, who had become very sick and couldn't walk and couldn't do anything anymore. But he was still able to write. So that's when he wrote these very, very riddle-like letters, and that had become more and more and more self-dissolved, more and more dissociated to the here and now. So they were already speaking partly from the other dimension. They were coming from the other dimension. He was starting to see things that he didn't see before he was ill. So the illness has contributed to him seeing more and more and more and more, but drifting more and more away from that reality that we dabble with on a daily basis. Reminds me a lot of myself. I feel very, very, very related to that person. So that's why he's a fascinating character for me. Absolutely fascinating. I see myself in that. It's very interesting, very interesting. And so when Sister Elizabeth tried to push her agenda of she, as most people do, she put her hopes into the Nazi movement. Totally without, and that's why we have to, that's like one dangerous example, one of these dangerous things, that mechanisms that are happening in people, when they don't know what's going on, really. They don't know where to look and where to start. So coming from Christianity, she then latched on to the Nazi movement and even Adolf Hitler, and became friends with Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler supported them a whole lot and all of this. And they made his books into something that they were never intended for. Because Friedrich Nietzsche was absolutely against Nazi, against anti-Semitism, against dictatorship, against nationalism, against any of these neurotic social constructions. He was against all of this these movements and these different types of societies. He was against dualism and against dictators who push themselves into the forefront and who push their agenda on everyone else. Well, he was very much against it. So the tragic thing happened when Elizabeth, after Friedrich died, and I think even before he died, because towards the end, the last couple of years of his life, he wasn't paying attention anymore to what Elizabeth was doing with his manuscripts and what anyone was doing. He was just sitting there almost in a delirium. He was already with one foot in the other dimension. He was dissolving his mind. Literally, his brain was dissolving. His I, the me, was dissolving together with that illness that was dissolving his brain. It's a very interesting situation that happened there. And totally to the mercy to Elizabeth and his mother. And he even accused them of being bad and of being, he had some names for them, half lovingly and half criticizing. So they were taking care of him, but making him into a show cow, into a show clown. And so he didn't like that at all, obviously. That didn't feel too good. But he also kind of laughed about it. He was able to laugh about himself, which completely freed him. Those were his self-humor wings that lifted him above society. The moment you can laugh about yourself and everything, you fly over society like an eagle, and you are able to float above all of this conundrum underneath the marketplace and the social norms and neuroticism that is happening down there. He said, it's lonely up there in the sky. It's lonely up there in the clouds, above the clouds. No one followed him to the peak of the mountains. He walked there all by himself. Not just physically in person, but mentally as well. He said, when you fly mentally, that's when people really get mad. I saw that before with guinea pigs and rabbits. We were visiting the guinea pigs and the rabbits, my friend and I, and she and her sister, they led out all the guinea pigs and rabbits into this enclosure, and there was grass enclosure, and it was very lovely. They had a big lawn for them, and the guinea pigs, they walk like this, and the rabbits, they fly over the guinea pigs like that. And I always noticed how that made the guinea pigs really mad. And that's kind of like it's a metaphor for the minds in humans, for society, So the regimented neurotic person dabbling in his neurotic needs and beliefs gets very upset when someone takes takes off like a rocket and flies above him and all of his beliefs. Here's someone flying mentally, and they get very mad because just for the fact that person is flying and laughing above that, all that stuff that is going on with the neurotic people, then that makes the neurotic egos feel like they're being stepped on, they're being laughed about. Even if someone just criticizes in a serious way, then they get mad. And then they will ask that question, who do you think you are? So, and Friedrich Nietzsche will probably say to that, I am Friedrich. I am a free spirit. Friedrich, the free spirit. So, and yeah, and that was his idea, for people to become free spirits, all of them, because then, and that is his superhuman ideal, because then we would be kind to each other, and we wouldn't be dabbling with worshiping someone else, or worshiping idols, or imaginative ideas. So that is his superhuman. The person who gives, the person who's empowered, the person who feels compassion for another living being, the person who wants to alleviate the suffering in other living beings. And so when he got sick, when he started to get sick, the sense of self started to crumble more and more before he was admitted to a hospital and then later to be taken care of by his mother and sister. So when he was first in Sils Maria, Switzerland, he was at the marketplace and he saw a man beating a horse. And this is a very significant event that happened in his life. And he's, as a writer, probably very much in his head, in not so much maybe in the head, but very intellectually, but also emotionally, very involved, let's put it that way, very involved with his writings, not paying so much attention actually to the outside world, what people are doing, how they're treating other living beings. But when he started to get sick, then that even started to dissolve this, being too much involved in his own ivory tower. He started to pay more attention. He started to look and observe animals and people. And so that's when he saw a man beating a horse. And he rushed over and he put his body over the horse's neck. He hugged the horse's neck like this, and he put his body in between the cruel guy with the whip and the horse. So he gave his body as a living shield to protect the horse. And he wasn't thinking, he wasn't intellectual in that moment. This was not an intellectual decision. Hey, let me run over there, or let me wonder if this is socially correct, or let me see if I can use this, or let me, whatever other people might do. If they help someone, they will go, oh, I will collect donations for that, or whatever. This is happening too often with people. No, in his case, and we know this for sure, because in his case there wasn't even any, society wasn't even up to that level at all. So they treated horses like merchandise, like inanimate objects, like trailer hitches, as Gary said. So he saw the horse being beaten, and there was just this feeling, there was just this pure attention, and the total non-self, the total, when there's no self, when the self is going and further away, then what is left behind is the pure person, the pure living being is left behind. The person who's truly alive and awakened and perceptive. Yeah. The truly caring living being, the inner child, is there. And the inner child, this pure being that he was, sees another living being being hurt, being tortured, the other living being in pain, suffering, screaming, kicking, and pain, and panic. So what does he feel? He feels compassion. Compassion. He feels compassion, and there's no need to put this into an intellectualization. This is a feeling of compassion. It's a feeling of, I want to help. I run over and help. That's the right thing to do. That's a pure act of love, true love. But what did society make out of that? They laughed about him. They said he went mad. Lock him up. And that's when he was, I think that's when he was admitted to the hospital, and he was no longer allowed to live by himself in that room, in that hotel in Sis Maria, where he has lived for many years. It's another living being, just like me. Yeah? People didn't understand it back then, and they still don't understand it. Most people still don't understand it. Like that guy asking me, why are you doing all this compassion and helping animals? What's the point? He asked me. Guy from Pakistan. What's the point? To him, there's no point. This doesn't get anything for it. So what's the point? It's not about getting. It's not about anything. It's not about intellectualizing. It's not about putting this into a religion. It's not about making something out of it. It's not getting anything out of it. It is just a pure state of mental purity, clarity, and attentiveness, and attention, and alertness, and awakeness. And that's why my message to the world is, if you are a Buddhist monk or nun, or any kind of meditation teacher or yogi, my message to you is, meditate on not just calming your mind. Meditate and do dissolve the sense of self, the me, the what can you gain from this, how many clients you're gonna get, and how much fame you get from your books, and so on. This entire story about you, you know. Meditate on dissolving that you. You can still make money and make a living and be famous and all of this, but what I'm asking is dissolve this idea about yourself, dissolve the self-image, and then see what happens. Then see what comes out. Feel this where you are willing to give your life for another living being. That's my message to all of these yoga teachers and self-help seminar people out there. Be willing to do what Friedrich Nietzsche did for the horse. Be willing to do it anytime. And there are some people, there are a few people in this world who do this. And they do not have yoga centers and brag and make themselves out to be this enlightened whatever. There are people who do this on a daily basis, and they will never be known by anyone. They don't strive to be famous. There are people who have no narcissism at all out there, who do this all the time behind the scenes, who give their lives for other living beings all the time, who practice this on a daily basis, who even seek out situations like this to help people who are like, there's a Swedish family in Nicaragua helping the dogs on the streets. That's what I'm talking about. Going into dangerous areas even, giving your life. I'm not saying do endanger yourself or your family like this, but be prepared. Be prepared to help. Be ready for that. Be willing. At least be in that mindset. Put yourself into that mindset of, yes, if necessary, I will put my body between an animal and a cruel person. Paul Watson has done it. He has laid himself over baby seals in Newfoundland. He gave his body. He was beaten. He was clubbed. Like they used the haka picks that they butcher the babies with. They hacked on his body. He almost bled to death. People rescued him and the baby and all of it. Other people came to his rescue. And then other people, including Brigitte Bardot, the famous movie actress. She laid herself over the baby seals and crying, sobbing. That's what I'm talking about. That is what Friedrich did. And people laughed. Like that guy from Pakistan. They laughed and said, what's the point? What's the purpose? You must be a mad hatter for living like this, for thinking like this. So today it's become a little bit more socially accepted. People have written about it, they have made it more socially acceptable to help. Oh, thank goodness, you know. But whether it is socially acceptable or not, do it regardless. Put yourself into that pure state of beingness. It's a pure state. The self goes, and what's left over is your heart, your amygdala, your kindness, the blue God energy. And that's the infinite. That's the infinite cosmos. That is what other people are trying to reach and be close to. That is what other people are interpreting in their ways and giving it a shape and a face and giving it their image. But the infinite cosmos has no image like that. It can come in all kinds of forms. It can come in this form, it can come in this form, it can come in a Great Dane, it can come in all kinds of forms. It's not me, I'm not that. I'm just an indigo soul. But Jiddu Krishnamurti, yeah, that was one of the manifestations of the infinite cosmos. And he tried his entire life for over 60 years. He traveled around the world for like over 70 years. He traveled around the world giving lectures and having conversations with people about this pure state of mind where the self dissolves and what's left over is compassion. Where we have true compassion for all living beings. Where we're ready at any time when we see a suffering living being, whether it is a dog or rabbit or human child, we run over and we help, we protect that living being. And some people they will probably ask the question, but what happens if I dissolve then? The me dissolves then. Yeah, but that is good. The me, the idea of me, the idea. You as the flesh being are still there. You have enormous energy suddenly when that nasty self and the ego finally let's go of this clinging to self-images and ideas of your story and your goals that are based on neuroticism and mental illness and all of this. So when that lets go, there's tremendous energy, there's tremendous insight suddenly happening. A lot of people want to attain this coming from total neurosis and self, then there's no way they can attain it because they're in the other realm. How do you attain it? You have to be willing to let go of that entire self story. You have to laugh about yourself. You have to be willing to die for another living being. You have to dissolve the I, the self-importance and all of this. And then what comes out of that is real love for your body. Kissing your own skin, being good to this amazing conglomeration of cells that works in such utter extreme intelligence and unison. Be in respect for your own body, and be in respect for other bodies, for other living beings' bodies, for the horse's body. It's the same as your body. It's the same thing. I am the horse is me. And the idea is to love the other living being even more than your own body. So to be willing at any time to go over there and protect the other living being from being hurt. Protect the other living being from suffering. And give your own body for that cause. And even if it means, even if it means that I am being clubbed to death. I have to help. I have no other choice. These are my favorite shades. I love it. And so when we dissolve the I, when we dissolve this entire thing, even if we have been hurt as a child and we want to protect ourselves against being bullied ever again or all of this, the best way to do it is by dissolving the idea of I and me and loving your body and your being, the beingness that you are. Love the beingness, not the idea of self. Love the beingness that you are. That's a wonderful thing. And love more the other beings. Love more the beings that are very different from your own species. The beings of other species, with their beautiful bodies, with their beautiful smells, beautiful skin, beautiful vibrant energy. I want to run over there and want to protect the horse, the dog, the baby seal, the elephants, all the living beings. I saw a beautiful video of a baboon in India who rescued a baby puppy dog. I don't know whether the baboon is female or male, but the baboon, real big baboon, scooped up that puppy dog from the street with the arm like this. And the puppy dog hung over the arm, just like an infant baby. The puppy dog knew that the baboon was coming to save him from starving on the streets. So the baboon was sitting there with the dog, begging for food. People felt sorry for them. People were touched by that. People gave them food. And the baboon made sure the puppy dog was eating before him, was eating first and getting enough to eat, and giving the puppy dog fruits. The baboon doesn't know what the puppy dog needs to eat, so just sharing whatever people were giving them. Very, very touching, deeply touching. That is that state of, that's what I'm talking about. That's that state of mind that Friedrich Nietzsche was aspiring for all these years intellectually, and then demonstrated to the world with his own body when he laid himself against the horse and protected the horse from the cruel person. That is what Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about, and that is what he means by superhuman. He doesn't mean superhuman abilities of walking on water or turning water into wine or any of these, magic tricks. He wasn't talking about this. He was talking about the state of pure love, of infinite love, of infinite compassion and kindness and empathy. That's what he's talking about. And I want to see that happen in the world. I want the division to end. I want people to start to go within themselves and stop looking at other people or external things for answers, but really diving within and really feeling their own bodies, the preciousness of their own bodies, what their own bodies need and what the other bodies need. And more important, the other body, the other living being from the other species that is next to you in your life. If you have a dog, you put your dog before yourself. You look after the dog. You want to make sure the dog is safe at all times. The safety of the dog comes first, okay? Then your own safety. That's true love. That is pure love. For anyone out there who is in doubt or doesn't know, that is true love. True love is true empathy and true compassion. Okay, you guys take care.